All right, welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Pharmacy Badass. And so many independent retail pharmacies bill for Medicare Part B. Most of us do it because of insulin supplies. And so there's a lot happening there with the billers and the requirements and what Medicare is looking at. So we want to make sure you stay compliant. So we brought on, of course, the expert, Jeff Hedges, to help us dig into these different topics and help make sure that you are doing everything you're supposed to be doing and that the billing company that you're using is doing everything that they're supposed to be doing. Because we all just kind of assume our billers are going to help keep us compliant, but we can't just assume anymore. You've got to really take responsibility and know what the requirements are. So if you're not familiar with Jeff, go ahead and just give a brief overview, what you do at RJ Hedges and how you help independent pharmacies and DME places keep compliant.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Yes, our company provides a proprietary software, super simple to use. It's written to the 8th grade level so all techs and clerks can understand it because they're the ones normally getting the questions. So everything's online. You can buy our products either in packages, in programs, or or a la carte. So there's no hard, fast way to order things because we offer all kinds of options. So we worked on what you need, not what you want. So, but anyways, everything's done. I mean, all the documentation is required. We're going to talk about some of that here in a moment, but everything is kept up to date all the time. And DME POS products are the biggest changes that we work on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think what really hangs most pharmacy owners up, and this is something that I've learned over the years, is that medical billing, DME billing, these other types of services that pharmacy provide are really completely different types of businesses. I mean, they just have nothing to do with pharmacy. They use HCPCS codes and not NDCs. And with that change, and once you step outside of pharmacy, you really are held to a whole different set of rules. You can't just assume what you do on the pharmacy side is okay on this side. And so we're going to dive into that DME side and really explain what the differences are and how to make sure that you're doing what you need to be doing whenever dispensing on that DME side. So maybe just start us off on, what are the things that pharmacies, what are the first things that, they got to be thinking about as they make that transition over to the DME side?
Okay, so when it comes to Part B meds and DME items, turn off your pharmacy head and forget everything you know because it doesn't apply. It's a whole different process. So when it comes to Part B, we don't have a prescription. Even though it looks like a prescription, it's called a standard written order. Again, we're back to Medicare, so it's always going to be complicated. So the functions of that standard written order are fairly simple. I mean, all the requirements that are there is on our standard scripts we receive from our docs or through the eScript system. So at that point, now we got this standard written order. All the rules changed for DME on January 1st, 2020, 2.5 months before the pandemic started, and most people don't even realize that all that paperwork that you used to have has been eliminated, which is, mind-boggling at that point.
That never happens. It never goes that way.
Yeah, when the rule came out, I even talked to a couple of credit union buddies, and they weren't getting it. And I finally showed them some of the documents. I said, "This is all you need, and what you need is that standing written order, which is your normal prescription." Okay. At that point, you got to make sure that you got the correct product, and you're dispensing it to the correct patient under the correct format. Yes, you can do it through your pharmacy software through these different billing companies out there that work into your system. So we got contracted about billing, find out an easier way to do it. And one of the things we found actually was mind-blowing because all these audits are going on all the time. And I always look at how many audits are being lost. And it's like surely these people aren't losing, all these people are losing these audits. And then we're looking at it, we're pretty confident because we got everything there. But then we got started getting some audits from our clients and they were losing them. And this investigation I did, and it went into all the pharmacy software companies out there. If you don't, you can put an NDC in. You can actually make up an NDC so it goes through the system. Problem is, the only thing Medicare Part B wants, they want to know the HCPCS code and the modifiers. Your systems do not collect that data. So if you don't collect that data from the system, it's automatically going to get processed the way the billing software thinks it should be. For example, diabetic supplies. The HCPCS code is A4253. However, there are two modifiers that are very important. A KX modifier means the patient is on insulin. A KS modifier means that they're not. So if the modifier goes in incorrectly, it's being billed incorrectly, and the claim is lost. Also, there's minimum requirements or only requirements, like on diabetic strips. If you're doing a KS, non-insulin dependent patient, you can only give 100 strips or 2 boxes for 90 days. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, no matter what the doctor says. That is it. If you don't do it that way, you're going to lose the claim. If it's a KX modifier, you're going to do the same thing. 2 boxes, 100 strips, but for a 30-day period. Okay, so if the date of service on your claim isn't correct and it doesn't match up with the quantity you dispense, it's automatically going to be rejected by Medicare. So what we found during this investigation is that this data wasn't being collected. Not your fault. The pharmacy softwares don't have it. The billing companies that are out there don't collect it. So it's really hard for anybody to get the right data over to Medicare. Now, there are billing companies out there that you send all your documentation to them, and they will process it and put it in the right format and send it in. But you still got to look at them and see, how familiar are they? Do they do quality work? Are there any complaints? Because it's like everything else. There are people that are very, very competent out there. And then you got the guy working out the back room, has no clue what a HCPCS code is. So anyways, those are the types of things that we have to have. Now, the company that I was contracted to work with, because they do medical billing for immunizations, is TransactRx. They contracted us to do this research and help them write their software. They are collecting the HCPCS code and the modifier. Also, when we helped them write the software, if you were dispensing more than what is allowed, it gives you a warning sign, and it stops you from doing a dispensing that is not correct. Remember, the doctor doesn't get to pick the type of strip or the quantity. If he says he wants that non-insulin dependent to test 3 times a day, don't happen. So there's also a support document you have to put in. It used to be called a detailed written order, where you had to get the physician to sign, or written order prior to delivery. The doctor had to sign before you can dispense it. Gone, completely gone. So you have to have a document within your system. And in our system, it's called a detailed product description. It lists all the items there. And all you have to do is check it. Check the boxes or put the quantity in and go down through it. It's very simple. But you also have to keep that with that standing written order for your files. Now, as we move into the electronic age, you are now permitted to scan. Once you get all the documents together, you scan all the documentation right into your pharmacy software under the patient profile for that particular script. That eliminates all that paperwork you have to keep for Part B. You have to keep it for 7 years. Everything else is 10, but you can keep it in there and you don't have to hand all this paper because we got too much paper as it is. So let's use the electronic, but it has to be once it's uploaded, you want to make sure you have everything, including the EOB attached to go into your file. So, but anyways, other things have happened. There are no more CMNs. There's no more diffs. They all got eliminated on January 1st of this year. So we get calls all the time. Jeff, we can't find our CMN. I said, it's not there. They said, well, we need it for our diabetic supplies. I said, we eliminated it 3 years ago. You don't need it anymore. And they said, well, we're not going to be able to dispense it. I said, yeah, you are. Look at the sample patient file. Look at the policy and procedure in the portal. It explains it in detail on how to do it. So B is not hard as long as you do a very specific process. And then the documentation, that's part one. Part two is making sure that whoever's doing your billing electronically or manually, that they have the tools to access the information that that they need to properly build it. Because if they're not asking for it, they're guessing.
Yeah, and you mentioned the CMN, and if you're not familiar with Medicare billing, I believe that was the certification of medical need.
Certificate of medical necessity.
Yeah. So that was, I remember doing all that paperwork, and you had to have all these signatures. I mean, it was crazy. So it's very exciting to hear that actually Medicare has eliminated some paperwork, which is usually the opposite of what they do. And so I want to touch on something that you had said, because this, I think, is a point that most pharmacy owners don't realize because they still have that pharmacy hat on. And when you do DME and medical benefits, you have to take that off and put on the other hat, is that unlike the prescription where a doctor can dictate a brand, a certain type, when it comes to, like, say, diabetic test strips or Medicare Part B drugs like a nebulizer med or something like that, a doctor can't say freestyle life, life scan strips or, whatever the case may be. Talk a little bit about that. And then if a patient says, but Jeff, I'm coming to you to get, this, you're trying to give me this test strip, I really only want freestyle. What is a pharmacy to do? And does Medicare ever pay for those? Or is it just the flat amount and you got to figure it out? So talk a little bit about that, because I think there is a lot of, I'll say, mythology around that when it comes to specific brands.
Okay, good. So the doctor writes he wants one touch, which goes to a previous podcast we just did. But he writes it, he wants it 4 times a day, non-insulin dependent, don't care about anything. You will dispense one-touch strips. They're expensive. They're far more than what the Medicare allowable is. So, but they can't dictate that. No matter what they want to do, they can't dictate, and they can't change CMS requirements. And those are all listed on the local coverage determination, or LCD. What happens on that, and when I explain it to docs or I explain it to pharmacies, I said, so the doctor orders a pair of crutches or a wheelchair, and he specifically names a brand. Do you dispense it on what he's saying? Well, of course not. We wouldn't. Okay. Diabetic strips is DME. So no matter what the doc says, you don't dispense them. Okay. You dispense what Medicare does not want you. This is unlike the PBMs. Medicare does not want you to lose money dispensing their products. There are products that are below the allowable fees that Medicare is paying. Use those products. Patient want to complain about it? That's fine. This is Smith. I know your doctor wants you to use Ultra One Touch, but Medicare is only permitting me to use a True Track script. Now, if you want the One Touch, we can sell it to you, but there's a couple things you have to know. First, we need to do an advanced beneficiary notice, or ABN. We're going to fill it out. We're going to put in what the full fee is for the reimbursement, which is your usual customary for One Touch. They have to pay the 20% plus the difference between the allowable and your usual customary. not what you send into Medicare, but what your usual and customary is, which is your cash price. Okay. When they see why I can't afford $120 for a box. Exactly. We can't dispense it. And if we dispense that, we lose everything. So you have to explain that to the patient. Now, the PBMs are going to get upset with you if you do that on the drugs, non-Part B, but we're talking DME here. So you educate the patients, how to dispense, what they are authorized. Don't keep it secret. Say, you're only authorized to do one test per day because you're non-insulin dependent. Congratulations. So, and you don't need to have your fingers all messed up by the needle pricks. Then we move into this continuous glucose monitor process. That has just changed. And actually, it's changed 3 times, I think, in the last 3-4 months.
Yeah, I've stopped trying to keep up with it.
Well, my staff's outside the recording studio right now. They're actually working on continuous glucose monitors, and I haven't been given the latest change. But the biggest thing is, as you're doing continuous glucose monitors, if you're using us, we'll be updating. That's what it's going to be updated later today. But you got to read the local coverage determination, or LCD. Now, it used to be all 4 DMACs had their own. Now these are managed by CMS. It covers all 4 DMACs. So you only have one process to do. But these things change. LCDs, like I mentioned earlier, are constantly being updated. And sometimes they don't change the date. So they make a change in it and keep the original date. So you don't even realize that it's been changed and you're out of compliance. So CMS is famous for doing that.
Yeah. Where can pharmacies find their LCDs? Like, is there, a best website? Obviously, if they're your customers, you're keeping them updated. But if somebody's listening to this and they're like, holy moly, like I didn't even know these things out there existed. Where can a pharmacy go find, what is at least the latest LCD?
Okay. LCDs are easy to find. You should know who your DMAC is, what region you're in. Okay. Now there's only 2 contractors now. Noridian, DMAC A and D, and CGS is takes care of B and C. When you go onto their sites and you go into DME Part B, you'll see on the side LCD. Click on that and it'll give you all, I think we're at 57 LCDs, and they're not a single page document. Some of these things are 25 pages long. And that's after they pulled the documentation requirement out and had their own LCD for just the documentation. You got to read them. If you're dispensing, someone has to read them and make sure you're in compliance, because a modifier may apply to one of the items on the LCD, but not to another. And you just got to know that information. Whoever is managing your DME, they have to know this. Now, one of the other questions I always get, some of you are going to like me and some of you are going to hate me right now. They say, Jeff, I can't find anybody to do this for me that knows what they're talking about. I said, 2 choices. You can send them to our office and we'll try to train them, or find out who the best biller is in town for whether a DME facility or a pharmacy, and go offer them $1 more an hour and bring them over to your side.
Might take a little more than $1 more an hour these days, but yes, that is definitely a strategy that I know some people have employed. Like, absolutely, you're spot on. So if you're listening to this and you are in the DME space, want to get into the DME space, want to expand, it can be a really great space. You got to, hit all the regulatory things, head on and really take a proactive approach to that. And you're interested in learning more of how, Jeff and his team, which has like one of the best teams in pharmacies, got to say, I love everybody over there. Jeff, how can they get a hold of you if this is something that they want to pursue and go further with?
Okay. Sounds good. First off, the fallacy that you can't make money in DME is gone.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can make money as long as you do it right, especially diabetic shoes. You're still making $300 on a pair of shoes. Okay. So contact us. You can go to our website, www.rjhedges.com. We have all kinds of information up there. We have videos. Some of the programs you can order online, depending on what you need or what you have. Or you can send us an email at sales@rjhedges.com or call us at 724-357-8380. You'll probably be routed to Jenny, and she's just fun to talk to. So, but let us help you. I mean, we can help you. And yes, some people will say we're a little expensive, but you get exactly what you pay for. So
You do those $99 will help you be compliant in everything programs. They might work if you spend 20 hours. It seems like 20 hours a day working on them, but you definitely get what you're paid for. And I actually love your guys' offerings now, with the bundles. Like, hey, if you need a bunch of these things, here's this. But hey, if you just need a few things, a la carte out there, because as independent pharmacies are following some advices of getting more niched, getting more focused, you might only need you might only need to be worried about a few things and don't need to worry about everything. So thank you so much for your time in this, Jeff. You've helped us with this entire compliance series, and we still have more to come. If you're listening to this, if you didn't catch some of our earlier episodes, go back and listen to those, because there are a ton of compliant factors coming up at the end of 2023, and in particular November. We want to make sure that you're aware of all those. So thank you so much, Jeff, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
okay, thank you, and have a great day, everyone.